112 missed calls. That's how many times my son tried to reach me. After he realized exactly what he'd missed. But that morning, my phone was silent. Completely silent. My name is Walter Higgins. And the day my company celebrated 45 years of my service was also the day I understood my only son no longer saw me as his father. The ballroom lights dimmed. A soft murmur rolled through the crowd as the MC stepped toward the podium, smiling out at hundreds of employees, executives, and guests filling the grand hall of the Dayton Convention Center. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, "today, we honor a man whose integrity has shaped this company for over 4 decades. Behind her, 3 enormous screens flickered to life, filling with photographs from another lifetime. There I was, young, in an oversized hard hat, faces beside me. Faces that were no longer in this world. The applause echoed, warm, genuine. I smiled and nodded. But my eyes, they kept drifting toward the front row. One chair remained empty. A small white card rested on it. Reserved. For my son. The camera found it. Then the audience found it. And in that instant, everyone understood. That seat was supposed to hold my family. Instead, it held silence. The MC noticed. She stepped closer. Voice gentle. "Mr. Higgins, would you like us to wait a few more minutes?" I shook my head slowly. "No." She hesitated. "Would you like someone else to sit beside you?" I looked toward the back of the room. A young man stood there, nervous, in a suit that clearly wasn't expensive, but had been pressed with care. I didn't know it yet. But within the next 2 hours, the entire ballroom, and eventually the entire country, would witness something none of us saw coming. The young man near the back wore a navy suit that had clearly seen better days, pressed carefully, but worn at the cuffs. The kind of suit a person owns exactly one of. His hands were folded in front of him, and he kept shifting his weight from one foot to the other, like he wasn't sure he was allowed to be standing where he was standing. I smiled. "Noah." His eyes widened. He hadn't expected me to say his name. Not here. Not in front of all these people. My late best friend's son. Heads in the audience began to turn. Curious. Searching for whoever I was looking at. "Would you come sit with me?" Noah looked almost frightened. Me, I nodded. "Your father would be sitting there." If he were still with us. The room went quiet in that particular way. Rooms go quiet when something real is happening. Noah walked down the aisle slowly, like each step needed permission. When he reached the front row, he lowered himself into the empty chair, the one with the little white card that no longer meant anything. I patted his shoulder. "Thanks for coming." His voice barely made it out. I wouldn't have missed this. 5 minutes later, our CEO, Gerald Whitfield, stepped back up to the podium. He looked at me first. Then his eyes moved to Noah. And something in his expression told me this wasn't part of the program I'd been given. "There's one more thing," Gerald said. I frowned. Nobody had mentioned a "one more thing" to me. Not once. In 3 weeks of planning, Gerald continued, his voice carrying easily through the sound system. Years ago, Walter Higgins quietly declined several executive bonuses. Instead, he asked this company to create something else entirely, a fund built on loyalty, sacrifice, and service to others. A murmur rippled across the ballroom. People leaned forward in their seats. "Today," Gerald said, "that fund officially begins." He paused, long enough that you could hear the air conditioning humming somewhere above us. The very first recipient was chosen personally by Walter. Noah looked confused. Genuinely. Completely confused. He glanced at me, waiting for an explanation I hadn't given him yet. "So today, Gerald said, smiling now. Noah Bennett will receive an $800,000 legacy gift. The ballroom didn't just applaud. It exploded. People rose out of their seats. Some cheered. A few wiped their eyes. I watched 40 years' worth of coworkers, executives, and strangers stand up at once. And I understood, in that moment, that this had stopped being about me a long time ago. Noah froze completely still, like his body hadn't caught up with what his ears had just heard. He started, I think there's been some kind of mistake. Gerald laughed softly into the microphone. There hasn't. Noah covered his face with both hands. I reached over and squeezed his shoulder, the same way I used to squeeze his father's shoulder, decades ago, on a factory floor that no longer exists. You earned this, I told him. He shook his head, still not quite believing it. I don't understand. Why me? I didn't answer right away. Some answers need the right moment, and this wasn't it yet. Instead, I just looked at him. The way you look at someone when words would only get in the way. 3 hours later, I sat alone in my truck outside my small house on the edge of town. The engine was off. The radio was off. Everything was quiet, except for my phone, which had started buzzing against the passenger seat. Once, then again, in a rhythm that didn't stop. When I finally turned it over, the screen told me everything I needed to know before I even opened it. Missed calls. More than 100. Most of them from my son, Kevin. The rest from his wife, Brittany. A few unknown numbers. An old cousin I hadn't spoken to in years. And somehow 2 local reporters. I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I placed the phone face down on the seat beside me. Screen against the fabric. And looked out through the windshield at nothing in particular, because the story everyone had just watched unfold on live television hadn't actually started today. It had started 6 years earlier, in a kitchen that used to be louder, in a house that used to be fuller, back when I still believed my family would always find its way back to the same table. I didn't know it then, but the empty chair in that ballroom wasn't the beginning of anything. It was simply the moment everyone else finally saw what I'd already been living with. Quietly, for a very long time, 6 years ago, I never imagined my family would drift apart. Not really. Not in any way I could point to and say, there. That's where it started. Margaret and I had built a simple life together. Nothing people would envy online. Nothing glamorous. Just honest work. Cookouts in the backyard. Camping trips every August. Friday night pizza on paper plates. And church on Sunday mornings when the weather allowed it. Kevin grew up in that little brick house, believing we weren't wealthy. And in a way, he was right. The truth was simpler than that. Margaret and I had decided a long time ago that money should buy security. No detention. We saved instead of spent. We drove old cars instead of new ones. We told ourselves we were doing it for him. Margaret passed away after a short battle with pancreatic cancer. Kevin was 31 then, already married, already building a life of his own. Her death changed something in both of us, though it changed us in different directions. For me, it created silence. For Kevin, it created distance. And for a while, I told myself that was normal. People get busy. Jobs get demanding. Marriages require attention. Life moves forward, whether you're ready or not. I understood that. I truly did. I never expected weekly visits. I didn't need holiday dinners every single month. I only hoped, quietly, that we'd still be father and son in the ways that mattered. Instead, our conversations slowly turned into appointments. Dad, can I call you later, Dad? We're busy this weekend. Dad, maybe next month. Months became seasons. Seasons became years. the way they do when nobody's paying close attention. Whenever Kevin did visit, Brittany always seemed eager to leave. She wasn't rude about it. Not openly. Not in any way you could point to. She simply acted as though spending time with me was one more obligation squeezed between vacations and brunches and the endless calendar of other people's lives. I never blamed her entirely. Marriage changes priorities. But somewhere along the way, I noticed my son had stopped making decisions for himself. If Brittany wanted something, that became Kevin's opinion too, without much space in between. I noticed it in small things. The kind of things nobody else would think to notice. He stopped fishing with me on Saturday mornings. Stopped coming over to watch football. The way we used to. Shouting at the television together like it mattered more than it did. Stopped asking for my advice on anything the house. The car. His job. Even birthdays became text messages. Sent sometime in the afternoon. Always polite. Always a little late. Still, I never complained. Parents don't keep score. At least, good parents try not to. Then, about 3 months before my retirement ceremony, the company announced something none of us expected. The board wanted to celebrate employees who'd given 45 years of continuous service. Only 2 people qualified that year. One had already retired quietly. Moved overseas. Wanted nothing to do with the spotlight. That left me. The communications department wanted interviews. Old photographs. A local news crew planned to broadcast part of the ceremony live. Since the company had grown into one of Ohio's largest employers, honestly, I would have been perfectly happy with a handshake and a sheet cake in the break room. But Gerald insisted. "You've spent 45 years taking care of this company." He told me, "No. Let us take care of you." A week before the ceremony, I drove out to Kevin's house. He answered the door in golf clothes. Sunglasses pushed up on his head. Brittany was loading suitcases into the back of their SUV. Moving quickly, like she was racing a clock, only she could see. "Heading somewhere?" I asked. "Vacant trip," Kevin said, smiling. "Nothing big." "Before you go," I said, and handed him the invitation. He opened it. His eyebrows lifted. "They're televising this, apparently." He laughed. The easy laugh he'd had since he was a boy. "That's pretty cool. Dad, I'd really like to be there." He glanced at Brittany, then back at me. "Of course I'll be there." He hugged me, quick and warm. I wouldn't miss it. I believed him, every word of it, because no matter how old your child becomes, some part of you never stops believing the promises they make you. You want to believe them. You need to. I had no idea that only one day before the ceremony, my phone would ring. Kevin's name would light up the screen, and a single conversation would change everything I thought I understood about my son. Kevin's name stayed lit on my phone screen for several seconds before I answered it. I already knew something was wrong. Or maybe I should say, something had finally become impossible to ignore. "Hey, Dad." His voice sounded cheerful. Too cheerful. The kind of cheerful people reach for when they already know the news isn't good. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Yeah." Listen, pause. Brittany found this incredible last-minute deal. I didn't say anything. "It's this resort out in Scottsdale." He continued. 5 stars. Really nice place. We'd leave tomorrow morning. Tomorrow morning. The morning of my ceremony. I leaned against the kitchen counter and looked out the window above the sink. The old maple tree Margaret and I had planted together, 26 years earlier, swayed gently in the evening wind. The same way it always did. I thought the ceremony started in the afternoon. Kevin said quickly, filling the silence I hadn't meant to leave. "But we already booked the flights." "You haven't booked them yet," I said quietly. A long pause. "No. So you could still come." Another silence. longer this time. Then I heard Brittany's voice in the background. Low, but not low enough. Babe, tell him they'll understand. Kevin lowered his voice. Dad, we've both been working so hard lately. Brittany really needs this. I smiled. Though nobody could see it, I understand. You do? Yes. We'll celebrate next week. I'll take you somewhere nice. Just the two of us. That sounds fine. You're not upset, no? Really, I'm 75 years old. Kevin. He laughed, a little nervously. I guess you've learned not to sweat the small stuff. If only he knew. We said our goodbyes. The easy, practiced kind that don't cost anything to say. The house went quiet again after that. The particular kind of quiet that settles into a room once someone hangs up and there's no one left to fill the space. I stood there holding the phone long after the call had already ended. Margaret used to tell me something. Back when Kevin was a teenager, and disappointment came more often than either of us wanted. Don't react while you're hurting. She'd say, wait until you can think clearly. She was always wiser than I was. She still is. In the ways that count. So I didn't call Kevin back. I didn't send an angry text. Or a guilt-soaked one. Or any message at all reminding him how much his absence would sting. Instead, I opened my contacts and scrolled down to another name. Noah Bennett. He answered on the second ring. Mr. Higgins. I hope I'm not interrupting dinner. Not at all. I said, I have a favor to ask. Anything. There wasn't even a second of hesitation in his voice. Not one. That alone made my throat tighten in a way I wasn't expecting. The company's holding a ceremony tomorrow. I said, I remember you mentioning it. My son won't be coming. Noah went quiet on the other end. I'm sorry. I'd like someone sitting beside me. Another pause. Softer this time. Then he said, almost carefully, you want me there, I do. I'd be honored. No questions. No excuse. No checking a calendar to see what else might be more convenient that day. Just, I'd be honored. I smiled for the first time all evening. Your father would be proud of you. I told him. His voice cracked. Just slightly. I hope so. I first met Noah almost 30 years earlier. Back when he was just a skinny kid racing his bicycle up and down our street while his father, Frank, manned the grill in the backyard. Laughing at something only he found funny. Frank wasn't just my coworker. He was my brother. In every way, except blood. We'd started at Ironclad Steelworks, only 6 months apart. Same factory floor. Same impossible supervisors. Same mandatory overtime shifts that ate into our weekends. We bought our first homes within a year of each other. Our wives became best friends before we did. Our sons grew up throwing a baseball back and forth in the space between our two backyards. Some of my happiest memories still involve Frank laughing so hard he couldn't finish telling whatever joke he was in the middle of. He had this deep, rolling laugh that made everyone else laugh too, whether they'd heard the punchline or not. The kind of man who never walked into a room without somehow making it brighter than it was a moment before. And then, one afternoon during a routine maintenance shutdown, everything changed in the space of about 4 seconds. Metal screamed. Steam filled the room in an instant. Thick and blinding. Hissing out from somewhere I couldn't see. A faulty pressure valve had given way in the wrong place. At the wrong moment. And everything after that happened faster than my mind could properly follow. Something heavy crashed down beside me. Then another. I remember falling. Remember the concrete rushing up. Remember thinking, with a strange kind of calm, that this was it. But Frank didn't run toward the exit. He ran toward me. He grabbed hold of my arm and dragged me across that concrete floor while alarms screamed through the building and steam poured down around us like weather. Later. The doctors told me another 30 seconds inside that room would have killed me. Just 30 seconds. Frank never talked about it much afterward. Whenever someone called him a hero, he'd just shrug it off. Easy as anything. You'd have done the same. He'd say, maybe I would have. Maybe I wouldn't. I'll never know. Because he never gave me the chance to find out. Years later, cancer did what that explosion couldn't. Watching Frank disappear, one hospital visit at a time, remains one of the hardest things I've ever lived through. The night before he passed, he asked everyone else to leave the room. Just the two of us stayed behind. He reached for my hand, his grip weaker than I'd ever felt it. "Look after my boy," he said. I nodded. "You won't have to ask twice." He smiled at that, like he already knew. Those were the last words he ever said to me. Noah was 19 then, too young to lose his father, too proud to ask anyone for help, even when he needed it. He stocked shelves at a grocery store in the evenings, took classes at the community college during the day, delivered pizzas on weekends to cover what scholarships didn't. Every time I offered money outright, he refused. "Polite but firm. I'll figure it out," he'd say. So I found other ways. When his old truck finally gave out, I connected him with a retired mechanic who rebuilt the engine for almost nothing. When he transferred to the State University's engineering program, I introduced him to people who helped him find housing he could actually afford. When he graduated, I sat in that audience. Not because anyone expected me to, but because I'd made a promise to his father. And some promises don't come with an expiration date. Life, as it turns out, had other plans for Noah. He discovered he loved teaching more than engineering, and became a robotics teacher at the local high school. Some people thought he was wasting his degree. I never did. Every Christmas, without fail, a handwritten card arrived in my mailbox. Every birthday, a phone call, whenever my gutters needed clearing or my furnace started acting up. Somehow Noah knew before I even mentioned it. Showing up with his toolbox like it was nothing. "Figured you could use another set of hands," he'd say. That's simply who Frank had raised him to be. The morning of the ceremony, I arrived at the convention center early, my old truck idling in the cool morning air. Noah was already standing outside, waiting, wearing a Navy suit that had clearly seen a few weddings and at least one funeral. He stood straighter than half the executives walking past him toward the doors. "You clean up pretty well," I told him. He laughed. "It's the only suit I own. It looks perfect." He held out a small gift bag. "You didn't have to get me anything," I said. "It's not much." Inside sat a plain leather journal. On the first page, in his own handwriting, one sentence: "Some men earn promotions. Others earn respect. You taught me the difference." For a moment, I couldn't say anything at all. Finally, I looked up at him. "Your father would be proud." Noah smiled, eyes glassy. "I've spent 20 years hoping you'd say that." Before we walked inside, my phone buzzed once against my palm. A new photo, posted from somewhere far away. Kevin and Brittany, standing beside a glittering resort pool, sunglasses on, drinks in hand. The caption read simply, "Finally taking the vacation we deserve, 2,000 miles away." They were smiling. I locked the screen and slid the phone back into my pocket. Then I turned to Noah. "Ready?" He nodded. "As ready as I'll ever be." Neither of us had any idea that within the next 2 hours, everyone watching that broadcast, hundreds of people inside that ballroom and thousands more at home, would witness something none of us had seen coming. The ballroom itself looked even larger once every seat filled in. More than 400 people gathered that afternoon: executives, factory workers, retired employees. A handful of local reporters with cameras already rolling near the stage. Noah and I sat together in the front row. He kept glancing around like he was certain someone would eventually realize he didn't belong there. "Relax," I told him. "I'm trying. You look like you're about to take a final exam." He laughed under his breath. I've spoken in front of classrooms full of teenagers. Somehow this feels scarier. Trust me, I said. Teenagers are tougher. That, finally, made him smile. And it was the last easy moment either of us would have before the lights dimmed. And the first screen flickered on with a photograph of me at 27 years old. There I was, 27 years old. Hair so thick, I barely recognized myself. Standing beside the first production line I'd ever supervised. Another photograph followed, Margaret and me at the company Christmas party. Decades ago, she wore a red dress she'd bought on clearance. Because we were saving every spare dollar for Kevin's college fund. I smiled at the memory. She'd looked beautiful that night. She always did. The next picture showed Kevin himself, 7 years old, wearing an oversized hard hat during a family day event, grinning like he'd just been handed the keys to something enormous. He'd told everyone he wanted to work with his dad someday. My chest tightened, just slightly. Funny how life changes the things we're so sure of. The audience applauded softly as each decade rolled past on the screen. 45 years. It looked so simple, compressed into a 5-minute slideshow. Only I knew how many missed weekends filled the spaces between those photographs. How many overnight shifts. How many birthdays celebrated a few days late because the schedule didn't allow for anything else. The MC returned to the podium. Walter Higgins has become more than an employee, she said, her voice warm and steady. He became the standard the rest of us tried to follow. More applause. Then she invited Gerald up to speak. Gerald wasn't a flashy man. He'd started out sweeping warehouse floors while putting himself through college. And he never once forgot it. He adjusted the microphone, cleared his throat. I've spent 31 years working beside Walter, he said. In all that time, I've never once questioned whether he'd do the right thing. He paused. Sometimes, the right thing cost him promotions. The audience looked surprised. I felt myself frown slightly. We hadn't discussed this part. He turned down opportunities that would have meant moving his family across the country. Gerald continued. I nodded, almost to myself. That part was true. Margaret never wanted to leave Ohio. Neither did Kevin, so neither did I. He also declined performance bonuses. Multiple times. Now I really did frown. He wasn't supposed to mention that. Gerald caught my expression and smiled, like he'd been expecting it. I know Walter hates attention, he said, and a ripple of laughter moved through the crowd. But today isn't about what makes him comfortable. Today's about telling the truth. One story followed another. A maintenance supervisor described a night I'd stayed at the plant through a blizzard, making sure younger employees got home safely. A receptionist told the room how I'd quietly covered her husband's medical equipment after his stroke. Years earlier, I hadn't expected any of it. Honestly, I'd forgotten some of it myself. When you help someone, you don't usually keep records. You just move on to whatever comes next. Then Gerald called me up onto the stage. The applause lasted nearly a full minute. Standing under those lights felt strange. Uncomfortable in a way I hadn't prepared for. I would have taken fixing machinery over this. Any day. He handed me a heavy crystal award, engraved with my name. 45 years. It suddenly felt real in a way the invitation never had. You earned every day of it, Gerald said, shaking my hand. Then the MC stepped forward again. Walter, she said gently, we noticed someone sitting beside you today. Would you tell us about him? The screen behind her filled with Noah's face. His eyes went wide. I looked over at him, and he looked like he wanted the floor to open up beneath his chair. I stepped closer to the microphone. His name is Noah Bennett, my closest friend. Frank Bennett. Worked beside me for almost 30 years. Several older employees smiled immediately, recognizing the name. He saved my life during an explosion at our old plant. The ballroom went completely still. When cancer took him, I continued. Quieter now. Noah was 19. I glanced toward him. His father asked me for one thing before he died. My voice caught. Just slightly. He asked me to look after his son. Noah lowered his head. I never replaced his father. I said, I couldn't, but I've watched him become the kind of man every father hopes to raise. The room applauded. Noah wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. Then I added one more sentence, the one I'd been holding onto all morning. If anyone deserved to sit in my son's seat today, it was Noah. The room rose to its feet. A second standing ovation. Longer than the first. Stronger. I saw people wiping their eyes, including a few executives who'd shaken my hand 1,000 times over the years and never once looked at me the way they were looking at me now. Just when I thought the ceremony had reached its natural end, Gerald stepped back to the microphone, smiling in a way that told me this hadn't been rehearsed. Actually, he said, we have one more surprise. I looked over at him, genuinely confused. Nobody had told me anything about this. He reached into a folder resting on the podium. About 12 years ago, Walter approached the board with an unusual request. The audience leaned forward, all at once, like a single breath being held. Instead of accepting future executive retention bonuses, Gerald continued, he asked us to invest those funds into something that would outlive him. He looked around the ballroom, letting that settle. He called it the Legacy Gratitude Fund. He reached into the folder and pulled out a single sheet of paper, worn soft at the edges like it had been folded and unfolded more than once. His exact words, written the day he proposed it, were these. He cleared his throat and read, money disappears. Character doesn't. Help one good person, and they'll spend a lifetime helping others. The room went completely still. I'd forgotten I'd even written that. 12 years is a long time to remember your own words. For years, Gerald said, folding the letter back up. This fund quietly grew. Company contributions, investment returns, a few private donations from retired executives who believed in what it stood for. He paused, and I could feel the whole room lean in around me. Today, it has reached $800,000. Gasps rippled through the ballroom, quick and sharp. Even I hadn't known the final number. Whatever I'd expected, it wasn't that. The agreement gave Walter one privilege. Gerald said he alone would choose the very first recipient. Every camera in the room turned toward me at once. I felt the heat of the lights differently than I had a moment ago. Gerald looked directly at Noah. Noah Bennett, please, join us up here. Noah didn't move at first. His knees, when he finally stood, were visibly shaking beneath him. He walked up like each step cost him something. When he reached the stage, Gerald extended a hand toward him. On behalf of Ironclad Steelworks, Gerald said, we are honored to present you with the first Legacy Gratitude Award, $800,000. Noah just stared, his mouth opened, and for a moment, nothing came out at all. His voice disappeared entirely. I can't accept this. Gerald smiled. Gentle, but certain. You already have. Noah turned toward me, eyes filling. Why, I placed a hand on his shoulder, the way I had 100 times before. Except this time in front of 400 people and however many more watching at home. Because your father once saved my life. My own eyes weren't dry anymore either. And because you've spent the last 20 years honoring his. The room rose again. This time the applause didn't seem to have an ending point. It just kept going. Wave after wave. Until I honestly lost track of how long we stood there. I had no idea that somewhere in Arizona, beside a glittering resort pool, my son and his wife had just watched every second of it. Live. On a television bolted to a hotel bar wall. I didn't leave the ballroom right away afterward. Once the applause finally faded, dozens of people crowded around Noah and me at once. Employees I'd worked beside for decades wanted photographs. Retirees hugged me like I was someone they'd been waiting years to properly thank. Old supervisors. Men who used to terrify me as a young mechanic on my first day. Stood patiently in line just to shake my hand one more time. I've never seen a ceremony like this. A woman from Human Resources told me, dabbing at her eyes with a folded tissue. Another employee laughed softly beside her. I think half this room cried. I wasn't planning on any of that. I said, and I meant it. I believe you. The woman replied, that's exactly why it worked. Noah still looked completely overwhelmed, whispering the same sentence every few minutes like it hadn't fully landed yet. I still can't believe this. I finally pulled him aside, away from the crowd, near one of the tall windows overlooking the parking lot. Listen to me, I said. He looked at me, eyes still wet. That money isn't a reward for one afternoon. Then what is it? It's recognition. For the man you've spent 20 years becoming. He shook his head slowly. I don't even know how to thank you. You already have. How you showed up. I said, sometimes that's the greatest gift anyone can give. About 20 minutes later, Gerald found me near that same window, carrying 2 cups of coffee. He handed me one. You okay? He asked. I think so. He studied me for a moment. I've known you a long time. Walter. Too long. You've been trying very hard not to think about your son today. I let out a breath. Am I that obvious? Only to old friends. We stood there quietly, looking out over the parking lot, the afternoon light stretching long and gold across the asphalt. Finally, Gerald asked, do you want the media team to remove any mention of Kevin from the coverage? I thought about that for longer than I expected to. The broadcast had already shown the empty chair, live, to everyone watching. People would ask questions regardless. Reporters love a story that writes itself. No, I said finally. You're sure? I don't want anyone attacking him. Gerald nodded slowly. But you also don't want us hiding the truth. Exactly. He placed a hand on my shoulder. You're a better father than most men would have been. Under the circumstances, I wasn't entirely sure that was true. Good fathers. I'd learned, don't always raise good sons. Sometimes they just keep loving them anyway, and hope the rest sorts itself out in time. By the time I finally drove home that evening, the sun was already low behind the trees lining my street, and waiting in my driveway, headlights cutting through the dusk, sat a car I recognized immediately. The car sat idling in my driveway, headlights washing pale light across the porch steps. I recognized it before I even reached the front door. Kevin had come home, but he hadn't come alone. I watched him climb out of the driver's seat first. Shoulders slumped in a way I hadn't seen since he was a teenager, caught in some small lie. He looked older than he had that morning. Somehow, though it had only been a matter of hours, Brittany climbed out after him from the passenger side. And unlike Kevin, she wasn't carrying anything that looked like regret. She was carrying something closer to anger. Kevin stood quietly at the edge of the driveway, like he wasn't sure his legs would carry him the rest of the way. Brittany didn't hesitate at all. She marched straight for the porch. Walter, she called out before I'd even reached the screen door. We need to talk. I unlocked it slowly. You'd better come in. Then, neither of them said much as they stepped inside. Brittany's eyes moved around my living room like she was seeing it for the first time. To really seeing it. Though she'd been inside this house dozens of times before. The same worn leather recliner. The same brick fireplace. Margaret's old quilt, folded neatly over the back of the couch. Exactly where it had been for years. The wall of family photographs by the hallway. Kevin's gaze caught on those photographs and stayed there a long moment. There he was at 6 years old, holding up his first Little League trophy like it weighed more than he did. There he was at 16, grinning beside his first car. There, the two of us stood together on his college graduation day, his mother between us, smiling so brightly it still hurt a little to look at. Even now, Kevin swallowed hard. I haven't been here in a while. No, I said quietly. You haven't. Silence settled over the room, thick enough to feel. Finally, Brittany broke it. I'll just say what we're both thinking. Brittany. Kevin's voice was tired. No. She crossed her arms. $800,000. Walter, you've known Noah for years. You could have at least told us something was coming. I walked to the kitchen, poured 3 glasses of iced tea out of habit, more than hospitality, and set them down on the coffee table. Nobody touched theirs. I didn't know the exact amount. I said, you knew there was money involved. I knew there'd be some kind of gift. That's all. She leaned forward, jaw tight. And you chose someone else's son over your own. I met her eyes without flinching. I chose someone who showed up. Kevin closed his eyes like the words had physical weight. Dad, Brittany turned on him. Don't just sit there. He should have warned us. Kevin said, but there was no real conviction behind it. Just exhaustion. He invited us. I said evenly, weeks in advance. That's not what I mean. Brittany snapped. I know exactly what you mean. I said, you're upset because people online are calling you both something you don't want to be called. Her face hardened further. It embarrassed us. On live television. No. I said, it didn't embarrass you. She blinked. Excuse me, you embarrassed yourselves. The silence that followed had a different texture than before. Heavier. For the first time since walking through my front door, Brittany didn't have an immediate response ready. Kevin finally looked up at me. I owe you an apology. You do. I'm sorry. I believe you. I said. He looked almost surprised. You do, I believe you're sorry. I just don't know yet what exactly you're sorry about. His brow furrowed. What do you mean? Are you sorry because you hurt me, I asked. Or because everyone else got to watch it happen? He didn't answer right away. Not because he was being stubborn. Because, honestly, I don't think he knew the answer himself yet. I got up and walked down the hallway to the spare bedroom. And when I came back, I was carrying 3 old cardboard boxes, worn soft at the corners. Kevin recognized them the moment I set them on the coffee table. I haven't seen those since Mom. His voice trailed off. Open them, I said. He lifted the lid off the first box, slowly. Inside sat folders, old receipts, envelopes gone soft with age, handwritten notes in Margaret's careful print. What is all this? He asked. Our life, I said. He pulled out a faded tuition statement from the state university. His name sat printed across the top. The balance had been marked. In blue ink. Paid in full. I thought scholarships covered most of this. He said quietly. They covered some. I never knew. You weren't supposed to. He dug deeper into the box, and his fingers slowed over a stack of canceled checks. One after another. Semester after semester. Books. Housing. Meal plans. Then came the mortgage documents. The down payment on his first house. The loan I'd quietly co-signed, and then removed my name from 2 years later. Once he'd built up enough credit to carry it alone. Then invoices from his wedding, the photographer, the florist, the reception hall. Kevin stared at one of the receipts, and I watched something shift behind his eyes. Dad, you paid for this, I helped. I thought Grandpa no. I said gently. You never asked. So I never said anything. He looked up at me, and for the first time all evening, I saw something underneath the exhaustion. Something closer to grief. He opened the second box. Inside sat dozens of photographs, some faded soft around the edges. One showed his mother sewing patches onto his old Little League uniform after finishing a 10-hour nursing shift. Another showed me up on the roof, replacing shingles myself because paying a contractor would have meant dipping into his college fund. Camping trips instead of expensive vacations. Birthday cakes baked at home instead of ordered from a bakery downtown. Not because we couldn't spend more, but because every extra dollar already had somewhere to go. Kevin picked up a photo of his mother standing beside our old station wagon. "I remember this car," he said softly. "It had almost 200,000 miles on it. You kept saying you liked it." I said, "I hated it." He laughed. "Thin and shaky. Then why didn't you get another one?" "Because a new transmission cost less than your freshman textbooks that year." His shoulders started to shake. He looked down at the photograph a long time before setting it aside. "I never knew any of this." "I know," I said quietly. The third box held something different. Letters. Dozens of them. In his mother's handwriting. Every birthday card she'd ever written him before she passed. Every Christmas note. Every folded message she used to tuck into his lunchbox in elementary school. Back when a napkin note could still fix a bad morning. Kevin unfolded one with careful hands. Her familiar handwriting filled the page. "No matter how old you become, always remember that time is the one gift you can never earn back." That's when the real tears came, not the embarrassed kind. Grief. Regret. He covered his face with both hands. And for a moment, neither Brittany nor I said anything at all. "I've become the man Mom warned me not to be," he said, muffled behind his palms. A soft knock broke the silence. I opened the front door to find Noah standing there, holding a small cardboard box of his own. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I didn't realize you had company." "It's all right," I told him. Kevin stood. "Please, stay." Noah stepped inside carefully, setting the box down on the kitchen counter. "I brought dinner. Figured nobody remembered to eat today." That sounded exactly like something his father would have said. Kevin watched him move through the kitchen. And I think he noticed something for the first time. Noah knew which cabinet held the plates. Knew where the glasses were kept. Even knew the coffee maker stuck unless you flipped the switch twice. Not because he lived here, because he'd been showing up quietly. For years, while my own son had been somewhere else entirely. "How often do you come by?" Kevin asked him. Noah hesitated. "I'm not sure. Honestly, every couple weeks," I said. "Sometimes more." Kevin nodded slowly, absorbing that. "You've been taking care of my dad." Noah looked almost embarrassed. "He took care of me first." That's when Brittany stood up sharply. "This is unbelievable." We all turned toward her. "So now everyone just gets to act like Kevin's some terrible son." Nobody answered. She grabbed her purse off the couch. "I'm not sitting here for this." Kevin looked at her, and something in his face had changed since he'd walked through that door an hour earlier. "You should go," he said. She blinked. "Excuse me, you heard me." "Kevin, I need you to. I need to stay," he said quietly. For him, she stared at him for several long seconds, waiting for him to take it back. He didn't. She turned and walked out, and the front door slammed hard enough to rattle the picture frames in the hallway. Kevin didn't follow her. Instead, he turned back toward me, and for the first time in longer than either of us could probably measure, he wasn't looking at me like an obligation. He was looking at me like his father. Several months later, Ironclad Steelworks invited me back for the dedication of the new Legacy Gratitude Mentorship Program, an expansion of that same fund into something ongoing, pairing experienced workers with young people just starting out in skilled trades and engineering. This time, when I walked into that auditorium, the front row seat beside mine wasn't empty. Kevin was already sitting there, waiting, wanted to make sure I got here early. He said, standing as I approached, "You certainly did. Wasn't going to miss this one." He said, "Not for anything." Noah sat on my other side. the way he always seemed to find his way back to me. I looked at the two young men beside me, one connected by blood, the other connected by a promise, and understood something I hadn't fully understood before. Family isn't weakened by gratitude. It's strengthened by it. Afterward, walking toward the parking lot, Kevin stopped beside my truck. "Dad," he said, "thank you." "For what?" "For loving me, even when I made it hard." I put a hand on his shoulder. "Being your father was never the hard part. What was waiting for you to find your way home?" He wrapped his arms around me. The kind of hug that lasts long enough to say everything words can't. For the first time in years, I felt my family becoming whole again. Not because money had repaired anything. Choices had. Time had. And love. The quiet, stubborn kind that refuses to disappear, had finally been met with gratitude. If this story reminded you of someone who's been quietly showing up for your family, don't wait for a ceremony to tell them what they mean to you. Time is the one gift none of us can earn back. If this touched you, share it with someone who needs the reminder. And subscribe for more stories about family, second chances, and the courage it takes to choose love over pride.